Career questions with Christy. A couple of the questions that have come in over the last couple of weeks that have been common questions, so I thought I'd take a few minutes and answer them. And if anybody out there has questions that you would like answered, send them my way. If not, let's dive in. The first question I heard was, how do I overcome interview nerves? So I have an interview coming up and I get really nervous when I interview. What should I do? And that's very common. First of all, hi Trish. It's very common to get nervous going into an interview, knowing you have an interview. So you are not alone in that feeling. So my best advice is to practice and rehearse. You know that there's going to be certain questions that you are going to be asked. So you're going to be expected to talk about your experience, probably about yourself, that infamous tell me about yourself question, which we will probably cover on another video chat because it is such a common question. You'll be asked about your relevant experience and how it applies to the position you're applying for. So some of the things you can prepare for and be ready to talk about. So what I would recommend is to practice those and practice speaking in a mirror, to your dog, to a roommate, to a spouse, your children, anybody who's willing to listen, and just get comfortable saying some of the responses so that when you are saying them in your interview, whether it's virtual or in person, that it's comfortable. It's coming off the tongue naturally because it's part of your language and you can already speak to that. Then you can pause and be a little bit more thoughtful when you get thrown a question that you probably aren't expecting or asked to elaborate on. But if you at least know that you have some of those answers prepared, and you don't want to sound robotic, so I don't want to come across like that and like you're reading a script. But so that's the purpose of practicing, so that it's repetition, it's kind of muscle memory. When you've said it over and over, then it becomes very comfortable and natural for you to say. And if you have that confidence that you're going to be able to answer those questions, then you're less likely to be nervous going into that interview. So practice, and if you feel nervous practicing in front of somebody else, say it to yourself, read it out loud, write out your answers, and then read them out loud. You can kind of hear how they sound in your head. You can hear how they roll off your tongue. And then get to the point where you're comfortable, maybe practicing again with a human or a dog, a cat. And if you get to the point where you have a mock interview, that's even better. That will really help your nerves. So that is one question. Another question I have received recently is, how do I explain wanting to make a career change? So this came from somebody who wanted to go completely into a different industry and was worried about how to explain that. And my response was that actually that's one of the best or easiest things to explain, because you can say I wasn't, and this was true, the gentleman wasn't challenged. If he went into an industry, turns out it wasn't his passion, it wasn't where he felt comfortable. He knew there were other things for him to be doing. So I think you can just be brutally honest about that and explain that he was relatively new out of school and had tried a few jobs and they weren't a fit. So he has discovered since then what would be his passion or excitement or better fit for his skills. And so then it becomes a natural discussion of, you don't have to bash what you were doing or or talk negatively about what you're doing. We say, you know what, I was doing that. I thought I wanted to be in hospitality and I thought that was going to be a great fit for me, but it turns out, you know what, I'm more marketing oriented, or I am more numbers. I love the challenge of figuring out balance sheets and always knowing that there's a right answer at the end of the day. And now that I've discovered this is, clearly the direction that I want to go. And so I am getting my experience and my internship or my studying is all in that direction because this is where I want to ultimately end up in my career. And if you show that that's genuine and natural and that you really are passionate about it, that'll come through. And so everybody will be, excited to talk to you about it. And What I also recommend is whatever you can pull out of that experience that is somewhat related to the new one. So even if they're totally different industries, but I was in hospitality and therefore I had to, I'm making this up, but at the end of the night I had to, ring out of all the, I was a waitress and I had to tip out and I had to reconcile, all the bills and stuff. And that made me realize how much I love working with numbers and working with money. And I was really good at it. And I, had a 100% record of cashing out at the end of the night, or I never had any errors, or anything that you can pull in one industry to the other, even though it's not a match. So if you want to go into marketing, but you were a volunteer and you did the social media for a nonprofit, or you have been on a lot of social media and you discovered that you're really good at it for your own brand, and you know that that'll translate well into marketing, and you can use those same skills and give examples of how you may have grown your own following or gotten people interested in products that you were talking about just organically because you love them so much, and now you want to take that into a new industry. So easy to explain a career change, but be honest and passionate. Tell them why you are interested in the new one and what skills may translate over. Hopefully that makes sense and is helpful. And then for all of you just joining, this is Career Questions with Christy. And this one I hear a lot and always have. I don't hear back from job applications. What can I do? And this is one where people are often asking, I send in my resume, I send in my application, and nothing. I don't hear anything back. Am I doing something wrong? What can I do to prevent that? And in this day and age, you can't always pick up the phone and call the person that you sent the application to, because you often don't get that contact information to be able to do that. So, but the question I ask when I get that question, I ask the question back, which is, did you send it only through the job application site, or did you get it to a human to help you get it to a hiring manager, recruiting person, somebody even in the company? Because one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they apply for jobs is they only go through Glassdoor, they only go through Indeed, they only go through the job website, they only go through LinkedIn, and they leave it there. And sadly, that's often a black hole of resumes that they just get dumped there, they get reviewed by a computer, and if you don't have the right keywords in it, you're destined to stay there, and that's why you're not hearing back. So you can still do that, but you don't need to stop there. You need to take it another step and find a human who will take your resume and get it into the company. Ideally, you have a human connection who can get it to the hiring manager or somebody in that department. But even if it's somebody, and then that's somebody if it's one of your best friends or a colleague, that's the best. But even if it's somebody who's a second connection, you might not know them directly, but your BFF does, or somebody else you worked with does, and then they can help you get your resume to that person who can walk it in or email it in. That is still more desirable than just sending it into the job portal or the job email address. If you find a connection if somebody you don't know, or one of your connections doesn't know, you can still go to a third connection and try to find somebody who's willing to get it in to the company, because that human connection of somebody saying, hey, check out this resume, you're going to get seen by a human more likely than by sending it into the portal, which is just going to have to go through the computer scanning first, and then if you pass that, you'll be reviewed by a human, and then you're on a stack with a bunch of other people. So really, to get to the top of that pile, your best shot is to find somebody who will. And it doesn't even have to be a glowing recommendation, although we love that, right? Awesome. It's just the fact that somebody's pushing you and forwarding it. Say, hey, look at Christy's resume, or hey, I don't know her directly, but my friend really talks great about her. I think you should check it out. And even if it's in the company and not even in the same department or to the hiring manager, you get it to somebody in the company who can then forward it to the right person, you're still steps ahead of just going through the job board. So that's my number one advice, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot, because it's so important, is to find that human connection, whether it's 1 degree or multiple degrees, to get that resume to somebody who will look at it. And then at least you have a much better chance of hearing back. You might not be a fit, you still might not hear back, but you increase your odds tremendously of at least getting that review, so you know that somebody's seeing it, versus did anybody see it? Is it just what I call into that black hole? So those are my, I really need to get fancier signs, don't you think? A little loving hands at home, as my mother calls it. But hey, it works, right?